I'm humbled and honoured by your attendance here tonight. Also, I'm deeply moved that I've got some people that were here from my childhood attending. In addition, I want to acknowledge Tufts University from Boston, USA for their Perseus project and access to the classics. Edith Cowan University, Perth, Western Australia for their postgraduate alumni library services. Project Gutenberg Online USA for access to many public domain books that we used in sourcing the information and understanding of what was going to be written in the book itself. A lot of that happened a long time ago, and I've rehashed the interest in the subject of democracy from 2020 onwards. Before I speak about this book, I believe people should be given an opportunity to speak about their views. We have 3 different speakers tonight to assist. I hope they prepare the platform for introducing the book. Our first speaker is a man who has stood his guns and true to his cause since his career began, working for high-profile mainstream media companies like West Australian newspaper. He's one of the most respected journalists in Western Australia. He has spoken on radio stations like WA tourist radio programs headed by Mr. Barry Green. Mr. Jerry Roberts writes for the Light Australian newspaper currently. With vast extensive circulation, the paper is carrying a growing voice of democratic journalism. Please welcome Mr. Roberts as he approaches.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. I should have written that myself. I would be more modest. The first time I heard about Tim and his book was a month ago, precisely, when I was sitting in my car outside the Information Centre in Wongan Hills, in our West Australian wheat belt. And I received a phone call out of the blue. Tim introduced himself. The reason I was in Wongan Hills was because I live in a neighbouring town and I wanted to go have a swim at the Wongan Hills pool. Unfortunately, the pool was closed. There was a notice saying it was closed. The other notice I saw there was a plaque saying the pool was opened in 1963 by Sir David Brand, the Premier of Western Australia, our longest serving Premier. I'm a newspaper reporter by trade, and I interviewed Sir David Brand, not in 1963, I was still at school, but 7 or 8 years later when he retired from Parliament. And I wrote a long series of 3 articles which were published over a period in the Daily News. It'll be in the archive somewhere. Tim introduced himself in this phone call while I was sitting outside the Information Centre because they were trying to find out when the pool might open again. I was still trying to find out. The Wongan Hills time is much the same as Broome time, but we don't need to hurry too much. And I was simply too cold to get into the water anyway. And he said he got my phone number from Barry Green. And I said, that's fine, my phone number is not top secret, I'm very glad to. He didn't have to excuse himself for finding out where I was. Now, just a few days earlier, Barry interviewed me and Amy about the Light Australian newspaper, sitting on a park bench in Supreme Court Gardens on the corner of Barrack Street and St George's Terrace. And he was interviewing that for his tourist FM radio station which broadcast out of East Perth. Barry also broadcast out of Donnybrook where he lives on community radio in the southwest. And I was listening to his interview with Dr. Neil Benson, who lives in Bunbury and who's written a book about allergies. And I thought, well, a lot of people have allergies, and so I bought this book through my favourite bookstore in William Street. It's 100 pages, short chapters, neat sketches explaining how the body works. And I reviewed it for the Light Australian newspaper. And I think it's safe to say it's the only review I've written, or the only story I've written in the Light Australia which was not political. It was about eating your vegetables, green vegetables, soluble fibre, as the doctors say. Now it occurs to me that Tim might be hoping I'll review his book. It's only 500 pages of philosophy and history, a nice light read on a Saturday afternoon. And you're in with a chance, Tim. I mentioned it to my friend Jean Curthoys, who is a philosopher, who taught the first course in the philosophy of feminism at Sydney University. He's written a very good book, not light reading, called Feminist Amnesia, published by Routledge. So heavyweight stuff. And she checked you out on the internet, which I haven't done. I'll read the book with an open mind. And she said your philosophy is sound. So that's from an expert. I'll take her word for it. I'll take her word for it. Now, I know Barry. I've often done interviews with Barry. Barry's optimistic that we can turn around these dark times we're in. I'm not. I'm deeply pessimistic. The events of last week, when our Parliament pushed through, our government pushed through the digital ID, one of the crucial measures of what I call the COVID project. I've been writing about the COVID project, which I'm taking from 2019, 2020. By the COVID project, I mean not just the disease, and not just the lockdowns, and not just the needles, but wherever this is heading to us, which is total tyrannical control. And this went through Parliament without a debate. The Labour Party pushed it through with the assistance of the Greens. Maybe somebody in the Greens can explain to me how digital ID for all of us is going to save the wombats and the willies and the forest and koalas. I'll just give you a sneak preview of what I think Tim's book might be about, and of what I know that Gideon and Augusto are concerned, and many of us are concerned about. And this is, I'll just read you a few paragraphs of the review I've written for the 12th edition. The 11th edition of the light paper is here today. We put it together this afternoon and this morning in a suburban backyard not far from here. We packed it into 500 boxes of 500 papers, and it's going around Australia right now, being distributed by an army of volunteers. And the reason we're doing this is because the so-called mainstream newspapers and the mainstream media, by which I mean the ABC and Channel 7, are not covering the news. They are spreading propaganda and lies, and they're censoring the news. And to this day, to my knowledge, they have not interviewed a single person on the subject of COVID-19 who knows what he's talking about. I'll just read you a few paragraphs of what I think this struggle is all about. The book I've reviewed is a novel. It's the first time I've reviewed a novel. It's the Booker Prize winner for 2023. It's a wonderful book. It's called Prophet Song, written by an Irishman, Paul Lynch, set in Ireland. It's been described as a dystopian book, but it's not dystopia. This is what we are living in. This is what we are experiencing. We've seen it here in our own country. I'll just give you a few paragraphs of this, because the central character in this book is a mother of four, an Irish scientist, whose husband is a teacher who organises a rally, a protest, was arrested and never seen again. So this is what I've written for a future edition, for the next edition. The tyranny depicted in Prophet Song is a campaign to crush the spirit of a people. The reduction, the reduction of a national population to compliant robots, as we have seen in Australia throughout the COVID project, is bad social policy and bad economic policy. We have to fight. At the heart of the tyranny is an attack on the foundations of knowledge. The writer defines the essence of the project in a conversation between Eilish and her father, who is also a scientist. Now this is a direct quote from the book. We are scientists, Eilish. We belong to a tradition. But tradition is nothing more than what everyone agrees on. The scientists, the teachers, the institutions. If you change ownership of the institutions, then you can change ownership of the facts. You can alter the structure of belief, what is agreed upon. That is what they are doing, Irish. It is really quite simple. The NAP is trying to change what you and I call reality. They want to muddy it like water. Now, the NAP in the book is the National Alliance Party. It's the equivalent of our Australian Labor Party or the Chinese Communist Party or various other clubs of conformity and cronyism, which people join to ease their path through life. The people here, I'm sure, and Tim and his brother, the father, have not chosen cronyism conformity. Tim has undertaken something I'm supposed to have done. I've piped down. I've never written a book. He's undertaken the task of writing a book on democracy, which is appropriate, of course. You're Greek, and I congratulate you, because to take on a book you have to have an idea, and you have to have the confidence that you can put it all together and make sense of it. So, we are in a new dark age, but there will always be, in the darkest of times, bastions of humanity where people fight back. And it looks like the Florida Finger Football Club is one of them. And I'm delighted to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Morris, for those words. Next, I would like to invite Professor Augusto Zimmermann. Augusto Zimmermann is a high-profile constitutional professor of law and prolific writer, among other things. He's very well known here in Australia and abroad. He is perhaps known for his role as the former Commissioner of Law Reform for the Commission of Law Reform in Western Australia. Furthermore, his involvement in politics and constitutional work make him one of the world's most respected professionals in the field of constitutional law. Please welcome Professor Zimmermann as he approaches the podium.
Thank you. Can you hear? Yeah. It's an honor to be here. I know Tim for a long time now. I know his bravery. He has been engaged in the fight for freedom, which I believe to be so important now. This book is his contribution, and I'm really looking forward to reading the book, because I have a great admiration and respect for Tim. He's a friend of mine. We interact quite often via even social media, but in person as well. He has attended some of my book launches. He was attending my book with Gideon, Merchants of Death book, and another one called The Lucky Country. So I'm delighted that I have the chance now to not only attend this event, but I can see so many wonderful people around, but also to grab my copy of the book and to be able to, certainly I have no doubt, to learn from him. We are facing a very difficult moment in history, and just I think it was 2 days ago, the Prime Minister has appointed a very woke Governor General to in theory represent the King. We know that these roles are exercised in a rather undesirable way, because the system is entirely corrupt, and there is no such thing as separation of powers anymore, no checks and balances. and I would even go to the point of stating that there is no rule of law. So, being a constitutional law academic, I must say that I had to speak out, even though I feel uncomfortable in doing so, because I just thought that I could, at this point in life, have a very comfortable and peaceful and quiet life. But the tyrants around are not allowing me to have the peace that I expect to have at this point in life, because they are actively engaged in destroying your lives. The former premier had very strong links with the Communist Party of China. He was even found, the former premier Magal, praising China and Wuhan. I don't know why he referred to the place where the virus was released. But what he did was entirely against not only basic principles of the rule of law, but it was a violation of our constitutional rights and freedoms. Our constitution now has been completely disregarded. Important provisions in the constitution were disrespected by these oligarchs who hold you in utter contempt. When I was a Modern Commissioner, my interactions with politicians in this place were rather unpleasant. And now I'm 100% sure that you are ruled by the oligarchs. I think he refers to them in the book. And these people are people who are in power because they are greedy, because they are evil, and because they want to exploit and oppress you. So unfortunately that's the situation now. But there is time and there is opportunity for resistance. And I want to see this country to restore the rule of law. I want you to have your rights and freedoms given back to you because they were stolen from you. And these rights are not given by government. These rights are given by God. And what God gives, let no man take these rights away. The purpose of government is to protect your freedoms, is to protect your rights, and not to remove and undermine them. But you know, crises always serve as an excuse for oppressive regimes to act in violation of basic rules. And that's actually what they did. They trusted that people would be naive enough to believe in the narrative of the oppressive ruling elites. I'm sorry to call them elites, they are actually parasites, they are actually oligarchs. And because we believe in such a thing, we committed the same mistake that the Germans committed in the 1930s, when they actually had a ruler who actually used the emergency powers to disregard the Weimar Constitution. So every single dictatorial regime always starts with a crisis. It tends to be even a health one. And what I have to tell you is that you should not actually believe in government anymore. My, as I said, interactions proved my point. I can write about this. I have written even a book about this. That they are evil people who have no regard for you. And I have to say that perhaps God has called me for a time such as this. I was not born in Australia, and I have the Australian accent. But I have a love for you and a passion for justice. And I'm not going to be silent anymore. And I hope you can join us in this fight for freedom against tyranny and against oppression. And it's not a joke. If you are defeated, the country is doomed. And you have to give an account not only for what you did to yourself, but for the future generations as well. We are here to protect our children, to protect our neighbors, and to have a good time even, because I would never be able to get to know this gentleman if we were not together in this fight. Thank you very much. God bless you, and let's keep up the good fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor.
I would now like to introduce you to Father Kosmas representing His Grace Elpidius of Kianon. Father Kosmas is known to the community as as a qualified teacher, known as a theologian, priest and lecturandrite. Would you please welcome Father Kosmas to the podium?
Good evening, and I'd like to express my gratitude to all you who have come here to support Tim, especially the special guest that he's invited. I think we're all equal, as he often tells us. We're all equal and created by God equally. And although I've noticed both of you have spoken very well of my brother, which I know from a very long time, ever since I was born, actually. I've known my brother, but I know that he's put his heart and soul into this book, and it's not something he's just thought, I'm going to just go write a book. I think he's been thinking about doing this for a very long time. And these are the things that have been, not only himself, but all of us have been basically on our thoughts and in our minds about things that aren't quite right about society, and we need to fix them. And as pacifists, as Jesus Christ was a pacifist, there's only one way to do this, and that is information. And we need to inform the public about what is actually going on. I remember growing up in the school which was teaching us, in fact, what is a dystopian society, what is all that about, which I noticed that I don't think in this new age that this is actually expressed at all. The book 1984, I don't think is read in any of the schools. Brave New World, all these books that we were brought up with, and we know express what is a dystopian society, what is communism, what is, even books like The Animal Farm, which show us, what is a totalitarian government. These things need to be learned through the schools, and we obviously history is very important, and we even have a historian here, Dr. John Yanakis, who would appreciate that our history needs to be told, and we need to learn about our history in order to correct our ways. So this is something that needs to be expressed more in our schools, in our societies, and Tim, in fact, mentions this in his book, that we need to come back to educating the people. I'm very proud of Tim for writing this book, and I'm very proud of him for trying to educate us and all the people about these things that are going on in the world that need to be changed. And I'm glad that I'm in a room of rebels. I feel like I'm in a room of rebels here, but that is a good thing, because we need some people who can speak up, and Tim has associated himself with you for that reason, that he knows that these are people who can speak up. These are people who can bring change in society. Not only are we here to support you, Tim, but you see all these people are here just for you, to support your book and support you yourself as an individual, and to, more importantly, to support democracy and our way of life living. As you touched on, we fought, not us, but our forefathers fought for freedom in Australia, for freedom in Greece or whatever other country they come from Cyprus. There's different people here from different backgrounds. Germany, we all fought for freedom. So whether you're a minority or a majority, that doesn't make any difference. The 300 Spartans, for instance, were a small group, but they tried to make a difference. The Greeks who tried to liberate Greece were a small group. Did they think that they would win? No. But they fought anyway, because that was the right thing to do. And I think that is the point that we need to make, that whether we're small or less, doesn't mean that, and we feel like we don't have the power, we should still struggle knowing what is the truth, what is the right way. So thank you, Tim. Congratulations for your new book. And should we leave any prayer? Or? Yeah. I wasn't prepared for a speech, but he just said, just say a few words. So could you all just be upstanding? We'll do a prayer before we have our drinks and just a blessing on the table here. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, now and ever and ever to the ages of ages. Amen. Christ our God, bless this food and drink of your servants, for your holy now and ever to the ages of ages. Amen. Also like to give the blessing of His Eminence and His Grace, Bishop Elpidios of Kiev, who has allowed me to come here instead of him, who he's very busy, as you know, with the prayer services throughout this 40 days of Lent, which we're still going, by the way, for our Easter, or Pascha we call it. You may be seated. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got a 20-minute speech. I'm not going to hold you too long, and I think the food is going to come out soon as well. So what I'm going to say is a few words on the book itself, just a brief overview of the content, why I wrote the book, what was the process of writing it, what's in the book, and finally who the book is actually designed or written for. So, why I wrote the book. Very rarely is there any one reason for taking a stance. Usually there are many reasons that add up to a logical, objective and rational choice. There's a loading in the philosophy itself because it requires us to understand a little bit more than what the sentences or the paragraphs are saying. It draws from our experiences personally. And to say to you, the system's broken and it needs to be fixed, is too simple in a way. It requires a little bit more in-depth view to understand fully what I'm talking about. And just drawing back to the 2020, the period when the COVID period hit, I lost my job 3 times in 3 years. And that's not a normal thing to happen to people. I saw people turn around, I saw people around me seriously injured from the vaccines. Seriously injured with a limit on their lifespan. Rights and privileges had disintegrated. People representing us were powerless. Cost of living had become unbearable and tyrannical. We lost our ability to decide what goes into our own body. I thought, what could prevent this from happening again? What could stop this? I took the matter to federal court for my job dismissal. I took another matter regarding vaccine injury to our politicians. I said, if I organise 100 people to stand outside your office, would you then change your mind or use that as an excuse to come on side and help us change the law? Government doesn't work that way, they said. participated in many rallies, and as Augusto said, we've been close. We've been attending as many of these events as possible to see if there was an avenue or a pathway that we could take. We started websites, we started Facebook, social media, things like that. Yet all of this seems like throwing a pebble into the ocean. Yet all of these things point to the fact that we have the system there. We have a government. We have a system in place, and it's got the cogs, it's got the gears, it's got the mechanisms for a democracy to work, but it lacks the democratic process. The people just aren't being listened to, and Augusto's already given us a highlight, and so is Mr. Roberts, as to what the reason for that is. So many people are arguing with these tyrants, expecting some kind of outcome. There's a lot of people out there yelling and screaming and causing a fuss. And I thought, well, I was there once, doing the same thing. But I think the best way to describe that scenario is through a fable known as the lamb and the wolf. The wolf was in a forest. It saw a lamb by its mother, and nearby in a nearby paddock. The wolf crossed the stream to get to the lamb and its mother. The mother was so scared she distanced herself from the lamb. The other sheep also moved away from the wolf and the lamb. And then the wolf speaks to the lamb, saying, "Someone has trespassed on my stream and muddied the water, so I cannot drink." The lamb said, "I have no strength in my legs. I haven't even taken my first steps." The wolf then said, "You drank from my water, from the water in the stream." The lamb replied, "I've only tasted my mother's milk." The wolf, frustrated, said, "Well, I won't be cheated out of breakfast," and he ate the lamb. And that's tyranny. No matter how much you argue, no matter what case you bring forward, no matter how justified it is, how right it is, that's tyranny. People are always looking to get help from others as well. There are some of you who might say, well, you can go to government and so forth. But let me explain something to you about how our politicians work in this current environment. The services our politicians have been tasked to do and provide for include household budgeting, superannuation, will writing, TAFE help, Centrelink help, Medicare, Justice of the Peace help, local council services, power of attorney and guardianship, issues with synergy, workers' rights, road and community safety, etc. Where in that list of job description that they received when they entered that parliament as part of their job, where does it say you will now look at the freedoms of the people, rights, and a democratic process? In other words, the system is an apex down system. It's broken because the people and the citizens are not part of the system itself. Even if our politicians wanted to help us, they can't. It's not in their job description. It doesn't say anywhere that their job is to listen to their constituents. That is one of the problems that we have. Some people are thinking this system is too much. I've got to escape from here. I've got to get out of this system. And we've got people trying to be survivalists, going out and being solo survivalists. Yet, some of us have a memory of days when people had their chook pens, lemon trees, vegetable gardens. Some of us even know how to preserve foods, olives, dried meats, sausages, tomatoes, pasta, fruits, and so forth. In other words, you can escape the grid by not necessarily moving off the grid itself, but being still part of society and becoming self-sufficient. You don't need to go to the supermarkets every day if you can afford and know how to live. You can actually be more self-sufficient than in the past. And these things are being looked at the moment. There's groups out in Heathbridge, there are groups popping up everywhere around self-sufficiency, because self-sufficiency is an indicator of freedom. Self-sufficiency is one of the several indicators of freedom, I should say. By being self-sufficient, we free ourselves of dependencies, including those that we become dependent for food. And one of the criteria for the monopolisation of food was to trap us into this Coles or Woolworths choice of food. We can't get our food from anywhere else. Over 80% of the foods in WA are imported, or were imported at one stage. And where does our crops go? Where do the foods that we grow go? So the next step I'd like to talk to you about is the process of writing the book, which started 10 years ago. I left it unfinished for many years, and as I mentioned before, it started again in 2020 to 2023. I had to delete half the book and start again, because a lot of the stuff actually becomes irrelevant when you're talking about modern things and modern systems and technologies and so forth. So I had to rewrite it in a more generic way to give it a bit more of a lifespan. In my eyes, there are some mistakes in it. It's not a perfect book, and I'm really glad that I've got good and positive feedback that it is a sound book. And from others who have read it as well, who have said to me that it is a good book. That gives me some kind of confidence to stand up here and actually talk about it a little bit. Now, our societal problems are many. There's a lot of societal problems going on that we have in our community, and I'm not making any promises, because I'm not a politician. I never will be a politician. My aim was to find a solution that I could spread and get more people involved through information, as Father Kosmas had said. So if we can inform people, and if we can talk about the topic more openly amongst each other, rather than thinking, oh, well, you know, am I going to rock the boat and things like that. If we can actually openly say what we think and feel about the topic, then it makes a difference, a big difference, because that spreads the word and that creates a wave, and that wave eventually will splash where we want it to splash. Now, what's the book about? It's got 12 chapters. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will highlight the beginning and the end, as some of you might be wanting to read the book. Justification for Democracy is the first chapter. Then it's followed by something on defining democracy. It talks about prerequisites, the Athenian democracy, other issues and critiques, ethics, government peripheral issues, preserving the system, communism and capitalism, because it's still a current topic in our generation, the classes that exist within society, variations of government, and finally there's a synopsis. Those are the 12 chapters. Now, there is a quote that's not in the book, and I probably should have put it in there, because it's to do with justifying what democracy is. And it's from Plato. It says, «Της δε ζημιάς μεγίστη το υπό πονηρότερο άρχεσθε εάν μη αυτός εθέλει αρχήν». Which means the largest damage to incur is to be under worse people when a person does not want to take the lead. In a democratic society, you are the leaders, and if you're not taking the lead, you're going to suffer from people that are worse than you leading for you. Of course, with philosophies, we tend to regenerate the same kind of concept. When we were marketing the book, we said it in different words, which might appeal to someone in a different way. When a person says with great emphasis and pride they do not have an interest in politics, which you often hear in people in public places, they are saying they have no interest in their own job, work, freedoms, rights, income, household affairs, or faith. All these things depend on our participation in politics. So these are the things that justify why democracy, why look at democracy. And there are many subsections and subheadings that are in the first part of the book that you'd be interested in, I'm sure of it. Now, for the technical details, there are some academics here, and I acknowledge that. And just to say that my categorization of government systems is the same as Aristotle's, but slightly changed. It's got a system. We have a system where it's based on how many leaders are in charge. We have definitions that are based on how many leaders are in charge. So Aristotle's systems match pretty closely what I'm about to describe here, but mine's a little bit different, and I'll explain why. When it's one leader, it can be called a monarchy. When it's several leaders, we can call them an oligarchy. When the majority are leading, we can call them different names, including democracy, but when we're just taking into account how many are leading, we could call it a demarchy, meaning the demos and are the leaders of the government. But what differentiates that from a democracy is the fact that democracy means the holding of power by the people. The suffix on the end, coming from the Greek kratos, means that it's actually a holding of power by the people, which makes a world of difference. And so when we look at the number of people leading and the quality of the system, we have monarchy and versus an autocracy, which are both one person leading, but the monarchy is the better system of the two. It's supposed to be. Aristocracy is the better system of the oligarchy, and democracy is the better system of the other systems that are available. Now, in the book, I go through extreme lengths to highlight the fact that the chances of finding a monarchy are so slim that you may as well say they don't exist. The chance that we have an aristocracy, elites or people with philosopher type of minds are leading us with all good intent and passion, is also unlikely. And that's why we tend to call them autocratic institutions, oligarchical institutions, and either democracy or one of its variants, which are demarchy, oculus, and histocracy. Histocracy means a majority vote. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is just one small thing that I want to highlight towards the end of the book. I'm jumping ahead of my own speech here to say that I fully subscribe by one phrase in the Bible which says, John 8:32, the truth was in front of our faces all this time, and all we had to do was find the courage to open up and speak the truth to others. And John 8:32 says this, και γνώσετε την αλήθεια και η αλήθεια ελευθερώσει ημάς. And that means, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. And that's important to notice that it says that you shall know the truth, and that truth shall set all of us free. Going back to the minority case that Father Kosmas has brought up, doesn't necessarily have to come from all of us knowing the truth. It's about you knowing the truth, and in that case, being able to spread that truth, and then eventually enough people will be able to make or create a wave, as we mentioned before. In summary, the book says, therefore, it is our obligation and honours to perpetuate the knowledge of what is a democracy. And it ends there, it concludes there. And it also concludes my speech today. As you noticed, we'll be moving from here eventually, and the bookstore will be open for sales. And the bar should be open for us tonight. And the fruits should be coming out soon. I'll just prompt them to bring them out because I know that I'm sure all of us are pretty peckish at the moment. All right, so thank you very much once again.
I believe that there needed to be a solution found that help us achieve the